Hi, my name is Esmeralda. I'm one of the career counselors here at Santa Monica College, and today I'm going to present on how to find an internship or job as a dreamer. So let's get started. So I came up with an acronym that related to the word dream. So you want to develop research experience, activate, and mentorship. So I'm going to explain to you every stage and things that will hopefully be supportive, provide you with resources, and to get you started in kind of looking at the opportunities that are available to you as a student. Yep. So the first things first, as you're thinking about your job search, is you want to develop a list of your skills. So let's say you don't have a resume yet, but more just thinking about what skills do I have already? What interests? What am I interested in? For example, if I know my major, what aspects am I looking at? And what's important to me as well. You also want to look at previous courses that you've taken to see how that may have already attributed to your skill development, or even let's say you've been meeting with counselors and you've discussed your future courses to see if you have any opportunity to add some electives. And I would say part of this process as well is embracing your strengths and looking at yourself from that perspective, like what strengths do I have to contribute? Because I think as a dreamer, you have a lot of strengths. And so I want you to reflect on that as well. Um, so part of it is also, right, developing that list and then looking at the world of work. Whether you're a student who identifies as DACA or a student without a social security, it is a matter of kind of looking at what is around me and what are those opportunities that are available to me. So sometimes students are interested in occupations that do require licensure, but some of that licensure has become accessible even without a social security, right? So I tell students like, yes, keep in mind your status, but that status can always change. So let's look at it from an open lens. So let's look at, maybe industries that we could consider, especially because of the pandemic. There has been a lot of industries that have grown, like tech industries. There's a lot of contractual work, and that's a great opportunity. I also encourage you to kind of look at what the current need is. So what are the skills? So going online and looking at some of these positions and seeing what certifications are they asking for, what types of skills are they looking for, because it helps you begin to think about the skills that you can work on developing, or even looking at, do I want to add a minor to my major, or do I want to access a certificate of some kind that then enhances my experience on my resume? So if you don't have a specific occupation in mind, it's also good to explore industries, right? So, okay, I'm interested in tech. What are the tech companies that I could look into? Or I'm interested in nonprofit. I'm interested in healthcare. And there is actually an organization that has created it's like a pre-health dreamers association. And so that is to help students that are, like I said, either you identify um, as someone without an SSN, or you have DACA status. So that's what they do. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. You also want to look at licensure and certification. So like I mentioned at the beginning, there are some careers that you can actually pursue. So you can go through the education, you can get experience, and then you can pursue what those are. So I always encourage students, yes, we're talking about jobs and internships, but I always think of it as building blocks. And so hopefully as you're looking at jobs and experience or internships, you're thinking about how will these build me to sort of like that bigger experience that I will need for that career. So I do have some links on here that I would like to highlight. So this is one in particular that I can share in the chat. And this was created by Immigrants Rising, and also I believe with the UC system. And so what they did, they placed a couple of careers in alphabetical order. They'll tell you if it's accessible without work authorization, if the California license is required, the training. So they try to give you some general information, and because it's tailored for the UCs, it lists the schools that offer that major and the salary range. So what I'm going to do in this presentation, I'm going to actually list this in the chat for anybody who wants to open that up and save it. And so there's a lot of careers in here. So it's kind of nice because it tries to make it simplified a little bit more. There are additional resources that I'll cover as well that hopefully are helpful to you. So that's just an example of like those careers and licensure and certifications. There, a lot of this process is pivoting your experience. So, I always think of the students that I have met with, what are the things that have been the most helpful to them, right? So I've worked at S&P for a couple of years and I've helped students and in either status think about how do we leverage your resume? How do we get experience? And so I always think of it as sort of like levels. Of course, this presentation is for jobs and internships, but I always think, what can you do? Can you volunteer? And the short answer is yes. There are circumstances that sometimes it'll seem like you can't, but it just depends. It just requires a little bit more legwork, but know that career services or myself or any of the career counselors are happy to help you with that. But what's great about volunteering is that it's experience and you can put it in your resume. It's not a long commitment. It's usually like once a week or it's a short-term commitment. So that's nice. Depending on your major and what you're thinking about, we have to explore what those volunteer opportunities are for you. Great way to network. And sometimes those volunteer opportunities lead to internships. So there's a lot of internships out there. And so often students will ask me as a dreamer, or how do I know if I should apply or not? And what I usually say is we want to make sure it's coming from a reliable job board. So you could use like Hire SMC. We want to look carefully at the job description. Sometimes you will see some job descriptions that'll specifically say must be a US citizen, especially like government related things. Others don't necessarily say that. So you can reach out to the organization or to the job posting and just ask, should a candidate be selected? What type of documentation is required? And that's such an open question. You're not releasing any type of information. You're just simply inquiring about what the requirements would be. But I always say apply because part of the process in looking for jobs and experience is trying and applying to see how like it works and and just kind of understanding that process. A lot of information related to Dreamers is kind of pivoting to entrepreneurship. A lot of students have shared with me, like, I don't see myself as an entrepreneur. I want to go into like a helping profession. A lot of your opportunities will be more contractual. So I like to think, okay, well, let's look at the opportunities out there that I could pursue. So what skills could I gain? Okay, let me look at, I had mentioned before, let me look at the courses I've already taken. Let me look at the future courses. Do I have room for electives? Maybe I want to take a graphic design class, not necessarily because I want to be a graphic designer, but because I want to have that skill because it'll help me get contractual work. I thought that will help me get a job or, have an internship where I'm able to apply those skills and gain some income potentially. So there are some examples in the slide of Google Garage, which is free, Coursera, which is free unless you actually would like to get the certificate. So classes are the best places as well. So we have lots of classes at SMC. Some of them will have you actually do projects, and we can definitely list those in your resume. Part of this process too is networking. So often as a career counselor, I know a little bit of everything, but I don't know everything. So often what I'll do with students is we'll say, well, let's see if we have any campus clubs that you could join or engage in to kind of see what other students are doing. So we did have a club called Ideas. I don't know if that club is active currently, but that was specifically for Dreamers. And they did a lot of that work. I remember one year talking to the president of that club, and she shared with me, sometimes we just give each other sort of like that, hey, there's this job that I know about, this opportunity, it's not official. So they kind of help each other out. Professional associations related to the field that you're interested in the future. So when I was showing you this list here on the accountant, there was actually an example right here where it says license. Sometimes some of these are professional organizations, which what they're doing is maintaining that occupation. They offer um, networking events. You can kind of get to meet potential mentors. So it kind of helps to open up those opportunities. We have a lot of allies on campus through SMC that we do have a list of our allies, and you can always talk to those allies about what opportunities they might think would be helpful, especially our professors. And then LinkedIn is definitely something that is growing exponentially. If you look on our YouTube channel, we have a LinkedIn presentation that we had this week, and you could watch that one and really learn a lot about the process of putting your LinkedIn. So these are things that you can think about. How can I get experience? Volunteering, internships. I say apply to things, read things carefully. If you are concerned, career services can help you, right? You can come to us and say, you know, I found this opportunity, but I'm not sure. So that's really sort of the things that we can do as career counselors to help guide you in the process. Really be open to a variety of options. So again, just really be open to how you're going to gain experience. But I know that the goal is to get paid, right? So there are things that I have seen students do contractually, like they are nannies or they are tutors. Uh, Again, this is where it gets tricky because we're going to talk about something called the I-10, how you can utilize that to earn income without having an SSN. Also looking at internships. So for example, UCLA offers the UCLA Dream Summer Fellowship every summer. That position, I think, has already came and gone, but that's an opportunity. I was mentioning earlier the Dreamers, so I can link this in the chat if somebody's interested in healthcare, but it's a pre-health organization that's specific for that field. So for the audience today, if you could just tell me your major or career, because it might help me sort of tailor a little bit of my responses. Um, Fellowships are another way to earn income. So they're kind of like internships. It's like when you're in college and you get paid. So you might want to look there. You might want to look in the job description if it says stipend. So what that means is you're not they're paying you contractually. So in that example of the UCLA Dream Summer Fellowship, when I've looked at that position, it'll say you can utilize an I-10 because that you can get paid through a stipend. So that's the thing, is you have to learn the keywords that are helpful to you in getting that position. Part of this too is thinking about how can I actively engage in this process, because you know you're busy taking all your classes and you definitely want to find a job, but it does feel like it's such a big thing to do. I mean, I know I'll talk to students and they're like, I have to build a resume and a cover letter and I have to do job search. It just feels like a lot. So I always think, okay, well, let's create small goals. Okay, so this semester, I'll start looking, I'll work on my resume. Next semester, I'll work on my LinkedIn profile, right? And so career counselors can be your allies in this because we can help you with all of those pieces. We can help you with the job search, and we can help you look at opportunities. And on occasion, you know, with me personally, if a student is concerned about a position, I'll send out an email on their behalf. So I'll email a company organization and say, you know, I'm a career counselor at this campus. I'm just really curious about the requirements for this position. So that way there's also kind of like that filter in between you and the role. I'll say this again, just be really open to your opportunities. I mean, I know at SMC, right now we have a lot of students running for associated students, and that is a great experience to put on your resume. At SMC, we have president ambassadors. So only 20 get selected per year. Again, great transferable skills that you can start to use while you're a student at SMC to build your resume. Because as a dreamer, it'll feel like, well, what do I put in there, right? I don't feel like I haven't had quote unquote officially paid experience. So it's all about changing what you do have listed. Just today I was talking to a student and we were talking about growing up and how our parents would have us translate. So I was telling her how I became a translator for credit cards, and my mom didn't feel comfortable calling. And the student on the phone that I was talking to said, same thing, like my parents don't do that. They don't speak English very well. And I was thinking that is something we could definitely put on the resume, unofficial, translator. And, that is a great experience. Right now through the pandemic, if you're helping younger siblings, log into their classes, complete their work. To me, you just turned into an at-home tutor. Let's put that in your resume. If you're helping in your community, engage the adolescents, or in your church, maybe. Again, all great experience we can list. So I want you to think of this process as well when you're thinking, how do I build my resume? Mentorship is key. I think that the students that feel more supported are definitely the ones that build those connections on campus or build those connections in nonprofit organizations or anything that will help them. So some examples of mentors could be a friend. So you could be a first year student as a dreamer, and then your friend could be a second year student. I have students who are dreamers who are helping their younger siblings transition into college. Something we could put on a resume. We could talk about, supporting adolescents applying to college, applying for financial aid. We can definitely put that in there. But again, it could be mentorship, could be family, could be professors, counselors at SMC. And joining those organizations are key because you're able to then meet professionals in the industries that you might be interested in. Part of the job search is also being willing to meet others out there in the field so that you can learn more about the occupation. So something that we often recommend in career when working with students is doing informational interviews. So LinkedIn is a great place to find some of the other dreamers or other professionals in the field to learn more about their profession. So here's an example of how you could make that request and see what happens. And so often students have found this very insightful. So on top of looking at careers and reading about the requirements online, they'll also reach out to someone in the field and say, tell me how you got into your profession as a dreamer. Social media has been one of my favorite tools in this. I have found Instagram accounts for different, or even like Twitter accounts for different professionals that will share that they are themselves dreamers and that they're a professional. So I think that that's a great way to look at making those connections and learning more what job opportunities, because sometimes talking to somebody who's already gone through what you have, they might say, oh, I actually got an internship through this organization. I had an early job here. I did this, and that helps you shape your next step. But again, this presentation is really about job search and internship opportunities. And I'm here to tell you that it is available to you. It just looks a little different, but we still take all the steps of let me build a resume, let me build a cover letter, let me look at my options. So search, we talk about it as the gig economy. So gig economy means that there's the contractual work, like I gave an example of graphic design, or short term, like being helping at events like a wedding. I think of like food runners, things like that, like short term gigs. Tutoring, you're all college students now, so you could easily tutor somebody younger and you could charge your fees, right? But again, be willing to look at what's available to you. So some examples, SMC does have an online job board. It's called Hire SMC. Before anything actually gets cleared, that an employer petitions, we go in there and we double check and then we clear it. So you can definitely look on there. LinkedIn is something that is growing really, really fast. I want to show you an example of a LinkedIn group. So let me show you. So this is my LinkedIn profile, and I'm part of a group called Undocumented Professionals Network Group. Now, I myself am not a dreamer, but I follow this to support my students. And so how this has proven helpful for me is that in this group, sometimes you're going to see announcements of like mentorship programs. You might also see announcements on career development. It's not part of SMC, but it's a group that is specific for dreamers. I've also seen like job postings. So putting that LinkedIn profile for you is helpful because then you could, let's say, look up this group and join this group and look at opportunities. And so this one is called Undocumented Professionals Network, and that is a fairly new organization. And they're also working on, I think, like a mentorship program. So I think these are great opportunities that I recommend students connect with outside of SMC. Volunteer Match is a website for volunteer opportunities. So look at these carefully, and then if you have questions, you're concerned about, it sounds too good to be true, please reach out to us. Let us help you to confirm. I had a student get a letter that said, like, here's this job, all you have to do is fill out this paperwork. And I was like, no, don't fill it out. It was too good to be true. So Immigrants Rising is an amazing resource. They do a lot of support related to being a dreamer and the opportunities available to you. So they do a lot of support in mental health, but then they also talk about making money. And they have a program called Undocu Hustle, where they allow students to kind of walk them through what it means to be an entrepreneur. They walk you through a little bit understanding the I-10 process. So there's a lot of really, really great tools in here. So I'm going to go ahead and link this in the chat so that you can see how that works. Idealist is a website that filters nonprofit organizations. So nonprofits are great opportunities as well to get experience, even if you don't want to specifically end up working in the nonprofit sector. Often I'll get this question from students like, when do I disclose my status? You don't have to disclose your status. You just, like I said, you look at the job position, you read it carefully. If it doesn't say that it requires a US citizen or anything specific like that, you can reach out and just inquire and say, I'm just curious, what is it that this would need? If you offer the internship, you can ask for it to not be paid or request college credit. So there are little things that you can do to help you navigate gaining experience. And then, so it's when do I disclose my status and how to disclose my status. Again, you don't need to disclose it. And then just be careful with positions. Some of them are out there fishing for your personal information. So again, start with higher SMC, start with the resources like I mentioned, Immigrants Rising. And then if there's something that you have doubt about, you just ask us and we're happy to review the position with you. So this is a link to an article of contracting opportunities in high demand. And you can see this was updated about a year ago, but again, it's through Immigrants Rising. So they have done a lot of the work behind looking at opportunities. And so they give you a whole list of opportunities so that you could pursue. So that's something that you could look at. And then again, learning about how to have a side hustle. Students will say to me like, I am not an entrepreneur. I don't even know how to get started, and I say, okay, well, the great thing is that there's a resource here to support you in understanding on the process on independent contracting, because the I-10 does allow you to work without having to have a social security. So, I think that's available to anybody. So it's not specific to Dreamers. It's just in general and not a tax form that you have access to. And then I have a list of undergraduate fellowships here that you could link as well. So the presentation is a little short because I would like to have a Q&A towards the end. But again, this is more informative on job search tools that you can utilize to find opportunities available to you. Like when in doubt, just ask. We're happy to help. We can stop the recording now and see if you'd like.
Okay.